Welcome to this session on career guidance. Today we're going to talk about advertising, communication, public relations, and digital media. It's an important session. This is our third in our series organized by LOBA, or Loyola Old Boys Association. Before I go into my bio, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the topic. A lot of us think that communication and advertising are not our cup of tea. The billionaire Warren Buffett famously said, if there is one skill which will boost your career by 50%. It's not a PhD, it's not getting good degrees from top universities, it's actually communication. And just by sheer communication, you can actually get your career a long way. And I have seen this in my personal experience as well. A lot of our engineers and scientists are great in the technical subject, but when it comes to expressing themselves, they're not really the best. And that has held back a lot of careers. And so parents and students out there, think about it seriously. Communication is as important as most of everything else you study. Advertising, again, very important. And a question I always ask my students what's the most important advertisement you will make in your career, right? And a lot of students will kind of say, oh, I'm not going to be in advertising, but you are. The most important advertisement you will make in your life is your biodata, your resume, right? And that is a very important advertisement because that's the advertisement which will land you your job. And if a hiring manager looks at your biodata and resume and doesn't pick up the phone and call you for interview, you need to fix your advertisement, your biodata. So listen to the panelists today, get some good ideas, not only exploring careers in these fields, but also how you can apply it to your personal setting. With that said, let's now kind of walk through what we have for you today. Can I have the next slide? So this is my bio. Essentially, I have from the batch of 1977. We call ourselves Boys of 77. I've done a lot of things in my career, but most importantly, today I'm going to be the moderator. Next slide. And before we go into meeting the panelists, I wanted to kind of share with you why we're setting up this LOBA career guidance program. We call it LOBA Explore. Over the last 60 years, we have students who have passed out from Loyola, who are in various walks of life, very successful in their careers. And we wanted to engage these folks, next slide please, to help our students who are, our youngsters who are still in early stages of their career. Next slide. To engage them in giving guidance to our youngsters, especially students who are still in school, students who are passed out but early stages of their career, kids of LOBA members, so that we can prepare them for the jobs of the future. Next slide. And we have started the sessions in early November, and we've had 2 sessions so far. This is our 3rd session on journalism, advertising, and so on. We have 3 sessions planned for January. On defense, on engineering, on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. These are sessions which are finalized, ready to go. In addition to this, we have a whole, next slide, a whole list of topics we want to cover in 2021. Those are all listed here. And if you're a LOBA member and have experience in any of these areas, please reach out because we would like to bring you in as a panelist. Those who are interested can email us at exploreloba@gmail.com. Next slide. So in addition to the career guidance sessions, which are the sessions you're going to witness today, which are short 1 hour, 1.5 hour sessions, we're also thinking of a long-term mentoring program for these youngsters where the mentees will be folks who are in school right now or who are children of LOBA members or young LOBA members who are early in their careers. And the mentors will be these successful and experienced folks in various walks of life. And some of the topics we'll cover during these mentoring sessions are listed here. Okay, next slide. So let's come to today's session. Today we're going to talk about advertising, communication, journalism, public relations, and digital media. It's a whole vast of areas in terms of communication. I'll be, obviously you'll be meeting the panelists in a minute, but we'll be covering some of these topics, their careers, academics, what are the topics they, what kind of education got them to where they are. The job markets, just not in India, but also overseas. What are the kind of skills which are important to be successful in these jobs? And we also talk about their successes, their failures, their mistakes, what did they learn from it? And we also share some anecdotes from their school days. We'll have a Q&A session for attendees. And in the Q&A, we will only address topics which are not covered during the panel discussion. Next slide. So if you want to post a question in Q&A, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please make the questions short and to the point, because I don't have time to read all of them. Yeah, you write long questions, and it should be related to career guidance, okay? If we can't get to your question today, and if it's important, we'll try to get the panelists to reply to you afterwards, after the session via email, provided it's not anonymous, because if it's anonymous, you don't know who you are. Next slide. All right, so now let's get to meet the panelists, and I will ask them to go in alphabetical order. Joseph, could you be the first one to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Joseph John. I'm from the 1994 ICSE batch. I did a BA Honors in Economics from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and then a Master's in Economics from JNU in Delhi. I switched to journalism, however, and I worked in 4 different media organizations in India, mostly in TV, India Today, CNN, IBN, and UTVI. And then after 7 years as a journalist in India, I decided to pursue a mid-career journalism course in US from Stanford University. After Stanford University, I got a job in Al Jazeera English in Washington, DC. That was in 2009. And 4 years later, I moved to Doha, the headquarters of Al Jazeera. And I've been Al Jazeera ever since, for over a decade now. And I'm an avid quizzer, to add to, yeah.
Yeah, I know, you're semi-finalist in the BBC Mastermind. That's pretty impressive, young man.
Thank you.
Well done. By the way, I love quizzing, because I think quizzing and general knowledge are very important parts of journalism, right? You need to know your GK to report on some of the topics and stories you cover. Thank you, Joseph. Thanks for being part of the panel. Can I ask Karthik? Karthik is our guest panelist. He's based in Bangalore. Karthik, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Karthik Srinivasan. I call myself a communications professional and also an independent communications professional, because I'm not associated with any company right now. I've spent about 2 decades in various kinds of communications, and that I started after doing my BCom and MBA. I was quite aimless after my MBA because I had no clue what I had to do. So I had some interesting smaller stints in sales which didn't go at all, about which I will talk later. So I spent about 2 decades in various kinds of communications, I said. So one is the client side corporate communications, then agency side public relations, then agency side advertising, and finally agency side social media and digital marketing. So I've actually completed the whole gamut of how it started and how it ended kind of thing. And I'm actually quite active online on LinkedIn, Twitter, because that's actually part of my profession. I'm going to speak more about it eventually.
Good. Well, thanks, Karthik, for joining our panel. It's good to have, I might have told you the story. I mean, when I was doing my MBA, one of my dream jobs was to join Ogilvy and Matter. And to meet somebody who actually worked for Ogilvy and Matter is such a unique experience. And I love to hear some of your stories. For those who don't know what Ogilvy and Matter is, it's the oldest and most reputed, arguably the most reputed advertising company in the world. Started in 1850 by Edmund Matter. And later on, he hired David Ogilvy as his salesperson. And Ogilvy went on to create Ogilvy in Madison Avenue in New York. And in 1964, the 2 companies merged to become Ogilvy and Matter, the mecca of advertising, if I could call it that. So thanks for being with us today, Karthik. It's true delight, true delight. Nabeel, obviously, Nabeel, can you introduce yourself?
So I'm Nabeel Mohideen from the 1980 batch.
Couldn't on your video?
Oh, okay. Let me just.
All right, there you are.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nabeel from the 1980 batch. So after finishing at Loyola, I did my +2 in Marivanis and then went on to do a BA in English from Kerala University. I trained at the Times Journalism School in Delhi, and then joined the Times of India. And since then, I've worked in various news organizations, including Sunday Observer and Business Standard, and also in various kinds of news media, news agencies, and TV as well for a brief while. I was India Bureau Chief at Bloomberg News, and then joined Mint newspaper, and that was in 2009. And then I've been at Economic Times since 2013.
Lovely, lovely. And again, Nabeel, fantastic to have you here. Economic Times, for those who don't know, is the world's second widely read English business newspaper after Wall Street Journal. So you have some pedigree there, Nabeel. And again, Nabeel and I personally did not know each other till we got to this panel. But Nabeel's cousin, Mansoor, is a colleague of mine at Johnson & Johnson, and a fantastic guy himself. And his brother, Najib, is an oncologist in Chicago. So welcome on board, mate. Even though we haven't met, I know a lot of your family. So thanks for being here. The next panelist is Prathap. Prathap, can you introduce yourself, and then I will add in a few words about you as well. Pat.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Prathap, Loyola, 1977. While in school, while all my friends, most of my friends at least, were interested in either engineering or medicine, I was the least interested in anything. My mathematics was terrible, and I was scared of blood. Those two set routes were something which never really appealed to me. My parents were convinced that I would end up in banking because that was the next possible job one could take. I also had a shy at an MBA exam where it was more of an excursion to Cochin, taking the test, which is when I realized that what I really liked to do was to write, and I used to write in school as well. From school, I joined Marivanios. I did my pre-degree and then my BCom. During the years that I was there, I used to be very active with the not the school magazine, the college magazine. While I've never became the magazine editor, I used to write a lot. I used to write for anonymous people. Suddenly they would find their name in the college magazine and an article which they never wrote, but I was the one who wrote it. So I've been in, obviously, the next step after that was to find a place for myself. One of my seniors, or rather two of my seniors, Santosh Shivan and Sangeet Shivan, were instrumental in pushing me into joining advertising. I started off in a small agency in Trivandrum. 6 months I was there. And after which I was in Mudra in Ahmedabad. I was there for 9 years, post which I joined an agency called Grey in New Delhi. I was creative director in 1992. And then in 2003, I became the national creative director for Grey. Went on to head Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific. And then I moved from there, I moved to Chail, which is the Samsung agency. I was there for about 5 years. In Grey, I was there for 12 years. Post which in 2012, I decided to start my own agency. It is called Bang in the Middle. We have 3 offices. We have an office in Gurgaon and Delhi. Then we have an office in Bombay. And then we have a small operation in Sri Lanka as well, currently. So all what you want to know about me professionally is all there in that slide over there. So that is it, and I'm very, very happy to be here and help people to figure out what lies in advertising, because advertising is not something that you see in a newspaper or on Facebook or on the television. There's much more to advertising than what you know. Thank you.
Thanks, Prathap. And again, we were classmates in school, so there's a lot of things I can talk about Prathap as well. I mean, he's being very humble. He's obviously a nationally and world-renowned advertising guru. Won lots of awards. The Cannes Awards, the Euro FE. He's the only one from Asia Pacific who's won the Euro FE in advertising for his Incredible India campaign. And Prathap, every time I go through an airport or see that Incredible India banner in airports, I get goosebumps. Not because it's about India, but it's been designed by one of my classmates from school who sat on the same bench. So it goes a long way, mate, to see you so successful, and I'm happy for you. And thanks for being part of the panel today. And on the personal side, we have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
We played plenty of cricket together. Prathap in his youngest days, it might not look like that now, but was a genuinely good fast bowler. And we've had plenty of fun on the cricket field and off it. And we both have wives by name Jyoti. So there you go. How much more common can you get, right? So thanks for being here today. We're going to have a fantastic discussion. Having met the panelists, now let's see who's in the audience. So I'm going to put up a couple of poll questions just to understand who's in the audience so we can better direct our questions. You've got 15 seconds to kind of pick what answer best suits you. And obviously, after you click any of the answers, please click on submit so that we can move on. Okay, I don't have access to the poll numbers, but Binoy, once you're ready, please move on to the answers. Okay, so we have a lot of Loyolites, we have a few parents and Loyolites, a lot of ex-Loyolites, excellent, and some staff as well, great, good. The next question is more related to the topic of today's discussion. Okay, excellent. Okay, can I have the next question, please? Okay, we are coming to an end. If you have clicked the answer, please click on submit so we can end the poll. Okay, most of you are obviously interested in this topic. There are a few people who are not sure, so hopefully we can help you, better understand what the opportunities are, and through today's discussion. Okay, thank you for the polls. Now let's get into the discussion per se. So today's topic we're going to cover, obviously we're going to meet all the panelists. Prathap has gone through his career, personal story on how he got to where he did. Can I ask also the others, Nabeel, Karthik, and Joseph, to kind of share of how your personal story, how did you land up in the career you finally ended up? Karthik, would you want to go first? I mean, obviously when you left school, you were not looking to be the PR guru and a communication guru, but along the way you got there. So love to hear the story. Karthik?
Sorry, I just have to mute.
No worries.
Yeah. So just after college, I was a bit lost and I actually took up a sales job, which is quite unusual for me because I don't think I'm very good at sales either. It was actually selling Amex cards in India to the very rich people in Tirupur and Coimbatore, and I was terrible at it, and sales was not for me at all. And after I did MBA, I actually consciously thought about what I want to do in my life because I had absolutely no clue at all. And a couple of options were there in front of me, like finance, marketing, sales, and there was also corporate communications in a company. So those are the options that were available at the time. And I thought corporate communication was quite interesting because I used to stammer heavily all through my school and college. I mean, I used to be the last person to go in front of a class and read or speak to anybody at all. Even today, I actually stammer occasionally in case I don't know the topic I am talking about. If I'm not very confident about the topic, I still stammer. It was much later in life I figured that the stammering was not anything physical, it was just mental. If I don't know the topic well, I stammer. If I know the topic really well, I just don't stammer at all. And I thought amongst all the career options that presented myself at the time, CorpCom seems to be the best because it forced me to communicate for a living. And it was not like sales. It was not like a confrontational kind of communication. It was more of a thoughtful kind of communication. You need to plan your communication and talk to people. So I chose corporate communications, which is actually the client-side communication, as we actually call it, not the PR agency-side communication, corporate communications. So that's how I ended up in communications first. And then I just made my way from client side to agency social media side to digital side. And all those things just happened over the past 20 years. So it was actually stammering, which took me to a career option, which forced me to get over stammering actually.
It's a phenomenal story, Karthik, phenomenal. And, I'll just take a digression here and tell you a fascinating, something I'm very proud of in my career. Many, many years back when I was working with Cipla in India, we had I was in marketing, and we have the sales and training program where we bring in new medical representatives and train them to be our sales team. And somehow a kid by name Vikas from Johat in Assam got through the entrance exam, all that, and he ended up in our head office in Bombay. And when we start training him, we found he had a very bad stammer. And for a medical rep to have stammer is almost death sentence, because in medical rep, you have to confront doctors. It's in very not the most comfortable environment, and he has to detail based on his about his product. And during the 4 weeks of training in mid-course, we have to take corrective action and weed out some of them. And poor Vikas, because of his stammer, was on the chopping block. And I got to know this kid over the period of time. Kamath, our training manager, we know he comes from a family. Father is retired school teacher. There's no other jobs in Johat, and this kid obviously needs this job. And our general manager was a very tough cookie. He was all about quality, of our sales team. And the day before the decision, we have this kind of semi-farewell for kids who are going to be, not there from the next day. And during that party, Vikas starts singing beautifully. He was singing without any stammer. And both Kamath and I, our training manager and I, were looking at each other. What's happening here? He can't detail, but he can sing. And so we kind of caught him aside and said, look at the detail book. Just sing whatever is in there. Don't worry about detailing. And the next day, we convinced our general manager to keep him. So he went on to finish the program, became the sales rep in Johat. And his business is also outstanding. He was about 110 to business plan, 110, 130 to business plan. And the reason is because he get a chance in life, and he wanted to prove that he could do the job we, took the liberty of keeping on. So I love your story. I think a lot of parents don't realize that stammering can be overcome. These are, again, and also a lot of employers don't realize that people with stammer can still perform their job, and even in detailing and even in communication, which is great. So thanks for that story. And I know you have written a book about being social. Do you want to talk a little bit about that too?
I wrote the book called Be Social. That was in 2019. It was primarily about how better to use social media platforms, because we are never ever taught how to use social media, or why should somebody use social media. It's almost like monkey see and monkey do. All these platforms are completely free. Your attention is the only thing that they want, and they want your attention to be on those platforms all the while. That's why it keeps on scrolling and you endlessly waste time over it. So I actually took it head on to say, how can you make purposeful use of social media without thinking that you have wasted 1 or 2 hours on it? So is there a way to do it? So that was what the book was about. It was not about how to become a top influencer on TikTok. It was not that kind of a book where you can get a lot of followers. It was more about defining yourself to an audience, and how do people perceive you based on only what you write on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, or LinkedIn kind of stuff. That was the purpose behind the book, because I don't think there is any other book that teaches you what the hell are you supposed to do on all these platforms. There are so many platforms, by the way. So that was the point of the book, actually.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Nabeel, I know you kind of touched on it briefly. Would you want to just tell us how you got into journalism?
Yeah. So, like many, people finishing their +2 and getting into second group and things, I was also expected to follow my brother into medicine or some other worthwhile career. But, so after school and +2 and having failed quite, to get into medicine, I was then urged to take up a BSc in chemistry. So that would allow you to apply for both streams, engineering and medicine. So I went for a couple of days, and then I realized that this wasn't really, for me. So I took a year off and, to sort of think, evaluate, travel a little. And it helped greatly that my brother was a big support. And that's really important, to have family that supports you, and to have friends that, who sort of understand you. And without both those things, I don't think I would really have been able to get to where I have. So by the end of that year, I decided on a career in the media. So it should be journalism or advertising or public relations. Yeah. And I would enroll for a BA in English. which I finished. I didn't really, do that great. But after that, all the breaks that I got were in journalism. So I chose what seemed to be the best option. And I ended up at the Times School of Journalism. And then eventually my first job was at Times of India in Bombay. So that was...
Brilliant. I mean, that's a very interesting story from one angle. You took a gap year of 1 year to figure out what you want to do in life. And that's very common in the US and countries out abroad, where students take a little bit of time to say, hey, what do I want to do? It's not very common in India. And yeah. I'm surprised that you did it at an early age. Your parents were fine with that, taking a gap year to figure out what you want to do in life?
I think being the youngest was one of the things. So they had sort of given,
Bonus of being youngest.
That is one thing, this burden of expectation can be very heavy on children.
Absolutely.
And that was something and that's why I said, if you have a family member who supports you, that's incredibly helpful. And, you build up a circle of friends who know, who you have the same kind of interests. And, that becomes another support group for you. So these are...
Very true. Joseph, obviously you went into economics, right? And then when did the thing dawn on you that your life is all about journalism? Joseph?
All right. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'll start from school. So around 9th standard, I realized that I didn't want to pursue science. And I had developed interest in economics. And it helped that we had a good economics teacher in our 10th, Titus, who passed away last year, actually. So he was a great teacher, and it helped further my interest in the subject. Loyola at the time did not have commerce after 10th. So there was no way I could study economics in Loyola after 10th. So even though I had the marks, I decided not to continue in Loyola after 10th. And I moved to St. Thomas Central School, which had started a commerce batch that year. So I moved to St. Thomas, pursued economics, and then I applied to St. Stephen's College in Delhi. A senior in Loyola was in St. Stephen's at the time, and he guided me through the process. He was very helpful then. And I applied for BA Honors Economics and got through. And after 3 years in St. Stephen's in economics, at the time when I moved to Delhi, I thought I wanted to give the civil service examinations eventually. So even after I graduated, that was still foremost on my mind. Then I went to JNU for an MA in economics. But during my MA, I was getting disillusioned with economics. I felt that the subject was becoming too mathematical for my taste. So I was getting disillusioned with economics. Now I'll get to the journalism part of the story.
Yeah.
So when I left Kerala, I had no conception of journalism as a career. It had never been discussed before. It was never on my radar. So very casually, my roommate in college, so he said, you are an avid quizzer. You're good at, you have a great grasp of facts, and you're good at connecting the dots. So the best option for you is to become a journalist. I was intrigued, but I kept it stored in my back pocket at the time. I didn't pursue it too seriously. But during my MA days, I had a close friend who was very sure he would pursue journalism, and he influenced me, I would think. And the fact is that I continued to have a keen interest in following what's going on in the world. I was an avid quizzer. And I thought, okay, that kind of led me to journalism. One digressing point, I want to say that when I decided not to pursue science after 10th, my parents were very supportive throughout. Yeah. But after MA, when I decided that I wanted to switch to journalism, then they weren't too happy at that. They weren't too happy at the switch. They were keen for me to try for IAS, but and that year it didn't help. That is 2001 after 9/11, and it was hard to get jobs that year.
Sure.
So it took around 4 months for me to get my first break, despite the fact that I had good, I was in St. Stephen's and then in JNU, two top institutions. Still, it took a while for me to get that first break. So yeah, but then once I started off, then yeah, things worked out fine.
Brilliant. So how did Stanford University come into the picture? I mean, that's one of the best universities in the world. And how did you end up there?
So I had been working as a journalist in India for 7 years, and I was reasonably satisfied. And I mean, I guess I wouldn't. And then I got married, and my wife was doing a PhD in the US, and so that's what it prompted me to. I mean, I was reasonably satisfied with where I was in my career, but my wife being in the US prompted me to get to the US, and then the best way was to take up a course in the US, and journalism course. I'd never, though I'd been working as a journalist, I'd never done journalism formally. So I applied to multiple places in Stanford, and I chose Stanford because it gave me a scholarship, which which is actually difficult to get for a journalism course.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so Stanford worked out. So 1 year, it was a 1 year intensive master's in journalism, 1 year long master's in journalism, a very intensive program. After Stanford, again, that was in 2008-9. It was the year of the financial crisis, and getting a job again was very tough post Stanford. But luckily, again, Al Jazeera. I mean, I was contemplating whether to return to India, but then Al Jazeera worked out in the nick of time. And yeah, that's how I started off in Al Jazeera, and I've been there ever since.
Fantastic. I mean, it's a great message. Even though you were comfortable in your job, you still wanted to pursue a master's in journalism. That's great. Well, I know, Pat, we passed on your story because you covered a little bit in the intro. Was there anything else you want to add before I get into the next advertising side? Pat?
Yeah, I think one of the key driving things for me to find advertising as my career is that I have this mind of a squirrel.
Squirrel.
Okay. I keep jumping from one to the other. Today I'm fascinated by planes. Tomorrow I'm fascinated by flowers. Day after tomorrow I like shoes. You know what I mean? So I keep jumping from one to the other, and which basically meant that I couldn't settle down in one place and pursue that. I mean, I couldn't jump into a rabbit hole and keep going down, because no, that was not me. I had to jump branches. And advertising, actually, if you look at it, is something that allows me to do that. Because today I would be, working on a shoe brand. Tomorrow morning, I will switch to, let's say, selling a soda, right? And the third day I am selling fashion, and the fourth day I'm selling music. So there is no boredom, and even if I have to handle it, every day brings you a new challenge. There is a new crisis. There is a new, something which has happened. Some ad that you have done hasn't worked. Now, how do you fix that ad and make it work again? So every day is a challenge, and I like that. So if I take the squirrel analogy, that is what advertising allows me to do. It allows me to keep myself motivated because I don't know what tomorrow brings. It's not something which I'm very happy with, and it doesn't bore me. So I keep jumping, right? And that's exactly what advertising is. And you constantly keep your mind alert, right? It's a fresh dose of coffee every morning for you. And you wake up in the morning and say, come, let me go and have some fun. Honestly, I have never felt that I had a job or I have a job. For me, this was a hobby that I pursued, writing, and then therefore how it kind of, diverted itself into advertising. It's a hobby. I mean, it's a passion that I've had, and that's what keeps me going. I mean, at my age, I ought to have retired. If I had a government job or a regular job, I would have retired, right?
Yeah.
The reason why I have my own company is that tomorrow no one can sack me. I decide. I want to go and work, as much as I want for on whatever else I want. I have so much more freedom today, right? So that big axe on your head or sword on your head which a lot of people go through, which is that, am I being overpaid? There's a crisis on, there's a pandemic on, will I lose my job? I don't have any of those fears.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? It allows me to keep going. So from that perspective, advertising is something which was very, very suited for my mindset, and which is where I am, and I completely thrive in it.
Yeah. And again, a lot of people outside of advertising, don't know much about advertising, right? All we have seen is probably the Mad Men series on Netflix and all the fun stuff which happens in Madison Avenue.
Right.
Can you just take us inside? What kind of jobs exist, and what kind of jobs can students and parents look forward to when you look at a career in advertising? And I know you have a couple of slides which you can.
See, the first thing that I want to share is that advertising as a profession has been completely corrupted in most films and most shows and serials that you have seen. That is not what advertising is. Okay. Advertising is 99% inspiration, right? And 1% happiness. It's not even inspiration. It's just happiness that all that hard work that you have done has come out and people are seeing it, and you are actually directing the change of focus or change of fortunes for a company, right? Now, advertising, while advertising, like they say, is one of the oldest professions in the world, and it's not something which is a human thing. Advertising is there very much in animals, in flowers. I mean, if you look at the peacock, why does it dance, right? That is its own form of advertising to its mate. I mean, if you look at the males of most animal species or bird species, you would find them as flamboyant, right? I mean, they have put on the best colors. Why? Because they want to attract something, or the mate. Even flowers, why are they so decked up? Why are they so beautiful? Why are they so fragrant? They want to get the butterflies and the honeybees to come to them, right? That is actually advertising, right? In its own, and that's the purest form of advertising. But advertising, for the ordinary person, like I said earlier, it's a television ad, or it's a print ad, or it's a post on Facebook. But there is much more than that. Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Now, within advertising, you would find these departments. 35 years ago, when I started my career, advertising was a complete whole, in a whole of multiple departments coming together. That is client servicing. Client servicing is where most of the MBAs work, right? They are the client-facing people who meet clients and bring business and translate what the client wants, etc. Then there is strategy and planning. They are the ones who decide how do you attack. What is the message? That's the core of the message that needs, or what needs to be said in advertising is decided by these two. Now, consumer research was another big thing. What are consumers thinking about your brand? What are consumers? Why do they like your brand? Why don't they like your brand? If I can do something more to something, can I sell the product better? This is consumer behavior, consumer research, consumer feelings. You need to know all this before you actually design advertising. Media plan is again this. A lot of intelligence goes into this. On what platform is, today, because we have so many platforms today, right? Social media, digital media, mainline media, etc. On what platform does this target audience? If you have a target audience, right, you define who needs to buy your product. So if you're selling toys, you're reaching either the father or the mother, not the kid, because the father needs to buy or the mother needs to buy. Where does that father see? What does he watch? So therefore, where should I place the ad? That is done in media planning. Again, finance. Now, obviously, there is a lot of money involved in advertising, right? Now, if the money has to come in, and if it doesn't come in on time, the business will collapse.
Yeah.
Right? You have to make a lot of films, do a lot of shoots. The money has to come in, money has to go out. And if you're interested in the other parts of advertising, and if you overlook this finance bit, then you're going to get jacked, right? So you need to find people who are completely into finance to control that. HR and admin, again, a very, very important thing. It's a very high stress industry because you have deadlines to keep. There's a lot of, because there's so many people working together, there's a lot of tension that happens. There's a lot of stress that happens. Now, how do you control that? So when you have a company of 5 people, it doesn't matter much. But then when you're talking about 150, 200, right? 1,000, 4,000, etc. Then you need a very, very, very efficient, system at the heart on how do you keep people motivated. How do you tackle problems, etc. And then, of course, creative in pure in a pure simplistic analogy is the chef. If you walk into a restaurant, he's the chef who makes the dish. People come there to eat. He's the guy who decides how the food should be made, how it should be served. And if that food is not good, then there is no business in that place. Right? So that's creative. Creative is the guy who actually thinks up or converts a client problem into a visible solution that you would see either as a print ad or a TV ad or a Facebook post, so to say. Then there is technology. Today, technology is very, very big, right? How do you make technology? You have to, look at simple thing is how do you make a website? Websites are part of our business. Even when you see something on Facebook, there is a lot of technology that goes behind it. How do you make it work, right? So there is artificial intelligence that is slowly coming in. There is AR coming in, there's so many other things coming in. There's so many parts to technology as well. Coding is very important. And then production. How do you make a film? How do you print 1 lakh brochures? Are the artworks correct? And there are people who are specialized in it. And then, of course, there is also public relations or spin doctoring, as they say, which is essentially where Karthik is from. And these are very, very, very large. It's a very large industry. How do you make somebody look good, right? Which is basically what we are. How do you manage a crisis? Like when Cadbury had worms in their chocolate, PR swung into action, right? PR sorted out a lot of things, right? So that's PR. And so this is in a way a composite look at what advertising today is all about.
Very good.
Right?
Yeah.
Now go on to the next. Now I am part of creative. So my basic core is copywriting. Essentially, I think of an ad, and it could be a print ad, it could be a television ad, it could be a web film, it could be an event, it could be anything, right? Now, imagine the kind of jobs that are in. People just think of advertising as one business. No, it is not. And trust me, I can actually write 4 more slides full of these things. This is some of the things that which came off the top of my head. And there are copywriters in it. There are visualizers and art directors who put things together, who makes who imagine packaging like paperboat. The paperboard drink that we have. Somebody did that packaging. That comes from visualizers and art directors. How does an ad look good? An art director gets involved. There are designers, okay? People who sharpen the craft on art. And how do you make a particular art look good? Like, graphic artists, graphic designers. The people who actually define infographics, which is a very, very specialized skill. So do you know, in 1 second of internet time, do you know how many people see photographs? How many people see films? How many people upload stuff? How many people post? If you have to make a picture of that, infographic designers come into play. And then PowerPoint presentations. PowerPoint presentations, it's not something like this. PowerPoint presentations or keynotes today can be designed into some brilliant stuff. Okay, then you have 3D packaging designers, web developers, web designers, app designers, motion graphic designers, painters, illustrators, interior shopping designers. We actually get involved with placing our products inside shops. Now, how do you design the interior to make the product look much better? There are techies who come in, there are coders, artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning, UI and UX. How does an app look like? How does the app go around? How does a website come up? Right? All this is user interface, right? Then there's activation, shop retail experts. Then there is outdoor, anything which is an ad which you see in the outdoor space, as a hoarding, right? Or as a kiosk, or as something when you enter your lift, you see on either side of the elevator doors. That's all out of home. And there is signage. Like you go to a hospital and you have signage systems. This way to oncology, this way to gynecology, this way to something else, orthopedics this way. There is a science that goes behind designing the science within that. So now imagine the different kind of businesses that you have, and you need signage there. exhibition, events, show business. Now, how do you do a World Cup inauguration? That is part of an advertising agency's, it comes underneath that. I mean, there's so many things that come in, and CAD CAM and CAD and CAD CAM designers, photographers. Now, you want to make an ad, you need a photographer. Different kinds of photographers. There are specialists. Somebody's into fashion, somebody's into shoes, somebody's into motion, somebody's into tabletop, somebody's into recipes. Different kinds of photographers. Then Photoshop, image retouchers, image manipulators, finishers. Then there are, of course, models, the glamour side. There are people who spot these guys, which are talent scouts, talent managers, model and celebrity management, makeup artists. When you say makeup artist, these people earn about $1 lakh a day. That is, or maybe even more. That is how wanted these people are. Then you have hairstylists, clothing accessory stylists, casting companies, fashion consultants, film producers, directors, cinematographers, stylists, set designers, set makers, lighting experts, miniature designers. I mean, you can actually make a town on top of a tabletop. Somebody has to design that, right? These are miniature people. Prop makers. Props are things that you add within a set to make the place look good. A flower vase could be a prop. Anything which is, something on the wall could be a prop. Now, people design these things. Illustrators, storyboard artists, dancers, choreographers, stunt experts, editors, and of course, you get into the execution part of a film. Offline editors, online editors, colorists, 3D modelers, 2D animators, location scouts, line producers, script writers, lyricists, translators, dubbing artists, voice artists, sound designer, Rasul Pukuti, a very dear friend of mine, is a sound designer, right? I mean, like he designs sound engineers, mimics people, there are people who mimic, like Sachin Tendulkar, if he's not available. There's a guy called Chetan Shastal who does his voice, right? And he is paid very well for that. Singers, musicians, composers, arrangers. There are studios where you can shoot. So there are owners for the studio. That's a business. Rentals. There are mini celebs. Small celebs with 5,000 people, 10,000 people following suddenly become celebs on Instagram and things like that. Influencers. Karthik is an influencer. Stand-up comedians, bloggers, talk show hosts, travel writers, podcasters, content creators. I mean, the list goes on. So underneath, I mean, much like the typical cliche of an iceberg, the tip is what you see as advertising or creative, but underneath that, look at this humongous, expanse of opportunities that lie for you. This is something which I never knew when I started advertising. It is slowly, after many years, that I realized that it's such a rich field, and it's a heavily paying field. And there's no poor person in advertising. I guarantee you that.
That's great.
Because if you're really good at what you do, the sky is the limit. So
thanks, Pat.
That's all I have. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I mean, I love your last slide. I mean, I had no idea there's so many different jobs within advertising, and that I think you took time to share that is wonderful. One of the questions which came from the audience is about, what kind of courses are there which can help students get into these fields? And from the advertising standpoint, any particular course you think, which are the good universities?
Okay. So I think I'll go first, and then later on somebody can take over.
Yeah.
So, so to me, to join advertising, the first thing that you need is you want to love this job, right? It has to come from you, right? As somebody who wants to be in advertising, you want to know, okay, this is something which I really want to do, right? It's like saying that it's a talent. It's a talent of selling something, laterally, so to say. Nobody recognized it in me when I was a kid. Maybe I had it, maybe I didn't, but somebody could have spotted it, right? It's like you wanting to be a musician or a singer, or you wanting to be a painter, right? Or you wanting to be in the army, right? There's somewhere from inside you have that urge that, deep within you, there's an inspiration that you want to go and do something, in this particular field. That is what you need first, because no one can teach you advertising. Advertising is best learned on the job. Of course, today there are certain institutes, but first you need to have that liking towards it. There is MICA. MICA is the Communications of Institute in Ahmedabad. It's a place where there are a lot of disciplines which are being taught. Right? And there are lots of other schools as well. There is NID where you can do your visual communication. There is Srishti in Bangalore. There is Amity. There are so many other smaller universities as well. But first, you need that urge within you, or the liking or the want to do this.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Thanks, Pat. Let's also kind of cover the other areas. And again, what kind of academics, what kind of colleges are there for mass communication, journalism, and PR and so on? Nabeel, you want to talk about journalism and mass communication? Nabeel, you're on mute.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go ahead.
So I'll talk about courses. In my day, there was the Times School of Journalism. That has shut because the Times Group has started Bennett University, which offers a program in journalism. Typically, when we've been recruiting, apart from the now closed Times School, our first port of call was usually the Asian College of Journalism in Chennai, the IMC in Delhi, and Xavier's in Mumbai. Now, this is just the Times Group. Most of these offer composite courses, but as far as I know, the ACJ sort of breaks it down into specializations for digital journalism, TV, print, and so on, I think. But having said that, this is this is no longer the only sort of option that you have nowadays, because, and I think Karthik will speak more about it, the one barrier that you have to entering journalism is that you need to have a platform to be published. Now, 30 years ago, this platform was only available if you were actually working in a news organization. Now that is no longer the case, because anybody who's on social media can be published, and we'll go into the pitfalls of that and the advantages of that later on. But so so there is that aspect as well. Being on social media declares to the world that, or a prospective employer, that this guy has talent and is worth hiring. So, but we'll develop that theme a little later on.
Okay. Good. And Joseph, did you want to add anything else in terms of studying abroad for journalism? Any thoughts, Joseph? You're on mute. Joseph?
Yeah, I'll just talk briefly about the US. The journalism hub in the US, as far as courses go, is New York. Columbia University, NYU, CUNY, those are good institutions for journalism master's programs. And then you have Syracuse University. Then there is Northwestern University in Illinois. And these are the top names I can think of at the moment. As far as Stanford University goes, where I studied, it's not as such reputed for journalism. It's nevertheless good. It's not in the top 10, but Stanford benefits from being close to a tech hub. And so you get to be aware of various trends in the world of tech or digital media. If you're studying in Stanford, that gives you a head start. For example, I was an early adopter of Twitter back in 2008. And that was before even Tharoor or Modi got into Twitter. And that was because I was in Stanford, and there was we had an online journalism course where we extensively dealt with Twitter.
Got it. Good. I know we are running a little late, so I'm going to ask you guys to be more brief so we can cover as much as we can. Karthik, your thoughts on what's the best places to study, PR communication?
Yeah. A good place to start is actually with mass communications itself, because it'll actually give you an overview of the kind of platforms and the kind of media that exist and the history of those media, which is a very good context setting for PR and communications generally. Once you've done mass communications, there are two options. You can probably specialize in public relations in places like the Symbiosis in Pune, which actually offers a PR specific course, or there are other institutions like SCORE, SCORE. They actually offer courses in public relations because it's actually been incubated by people who have spent a lot of time in PR agencies. So those are kind of options. But however, having said that, if you have done mass communications, the best way to do PR is to join a PR agency as an intern, because you will learn the job hands-on. In my view, between advertising and PR, the main difference is with advertising, you actually pay and get your word out. In PR, you need to earn your way out on behalf of a client. That's a big ask, basically. So that's what you need to learn. It's all about articulation, because you might have all the words in your head, but you need to put it down and articulate it in a way that it can convince either a journalist or the audience or the media or the public that this is what the company is about, or this is what the product is about. So that's what they actually teach you either in an agency or in an institution like Symbiosis.
Now, one of the questions which came from the audience, and I'm just looking at it right now, is are there any entrance exams people can take, just like entrance exam for medicine and engineering? Are there entrance exams for journalism or communications? Nabeel or Karthik?
Yeah, most of these schools, like ACJ, has an entrance exam. Okay. So there is a kind. They have a schedule for when they solicit applications and so on. Yeah. I'm not too sure about the Bombay University one, but IIMC and ACJ both have entrance exams.
Okay, good. Karthik, you wanted to add anything?
Yeah. Most institutions have an entrance exam because they will actually test your aptitude as to how do you connect the dots in terms of what you read, what you experience, how you articulate. That's largely the exam. I mean, it's not as complex as to the kind of entrance exams like CAT and all that stuff. It's more about attitude and your communication skills at a very basic. You need to have that so that you can actually do better in the same field further.
One second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just need to add, the time when I was in school and coming out of school, etc. No one told us about NID and NIFT and IIMC, places like that. And even MICA for that matter.
Can I just stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
Can you just don't use abbreviation because some of the parents might not know it.
Okay. So NID is the National Institute of Design, which is in Ahmedabad. That's the main one. But then there are lots of other NIDs as well today, which are smaller. Then there is NIFT. The main one, of course, is in Delhi. There is National Institute of Fashion Technology. But underneath that, there are multiple other courses like fashion communication, fashion merchandising, etc. All these come under, which are communication related as well, and advertising, creative related as well. So there are entrance exams for all of this. So does MICA. MICA also has an entrance exam. So these are the other things which if you want to get into advertising per se, these are the other areas that you can get into.
Yeah, lovely. One of the main areas, one of the important factors students and parents look at when they're picking a career is, how is the pay, right? What is how much do these guys earn? I know this might be a difficult question, but I just wanted you to take a shot at it. What are the best paying jobs within your industry? I mean, in Karthik, in your area of, mass communication, PR, digital media, what are the best paying jobs?
Interestingly, I came to know quite some time back that there are probably more public relations professionals than journalists these days, which is actually quite ironic because you need to work with journalists, but there are more PR professionals than journalists, which is quite ironic. So it's a phenomenally large industry with many people, even in India. If you just look at the top 10 agencies in India, they would have thousands of people employed. On an average, any starting level work would be about 6 to 15 lakhs kind of pay. Mid-level would be 15 to 30, 15 to 40 kind of stuff. And then the more senior works would be about 50 plus kind of stuff. So it's actually a very, very well-paying job, extremely well-paying job.
This is PR.
Yeah, this is PR.
Okay. Fantastic. And Nabeel, from the journalism standpoint, who paid the most? What kind of jobs?
So, yeah, I mean, the people who usually get paid the most in this industry are, TV anchors who are stars. But I have to be sort of, honest with you. Journalism is not going to make you a millionaire. Don't enter the profession with that kind of this thing. It also means long hours and very no social life. So, but those whom we recruited from journalism school in 2019, They started at about 5 lakh a year. So in journalism, building your career involves switching jobs, gaining a reputation, getting paid by getting picked up by someone, and each stepping stone is a sort of an increase in salary, but also an opportunity for learning. And once you get in, you will typically specialize in data journalism, news writing, feature writing, film, TV, industry, government, socio-economic issues, environment, investigative reporting. The best kind of reporting is the kind that connects all the dots. So typically, as you specialize, your value to an organization becomes more. In business journalism is probably mergers and acquisitions reporters who talk about companies, buying each other. These are the ones who are the stars, but it varies.
Fair enough. That's a good insight. Pat, you want to add who are the big earners in your advertising field? Obviously, you have a lot of insights there.
Okay, so for us, in advertising, the starting salaries would be approximately between 3 to 5 lakhs annual, right? That's where you start.
Yeah.
And you would hit mid-level, and you're talking about 15 to 20 lakhs. That's where mid-level is. Then, of course, post that, it is a different story, right?
Yeah.
But I must say that the money situation in advertising today is much less than what it was earlier, right? And I'll tell you my own example. 2007 to 2012. You will not believe that I replaced a guy. So when I became the head of, I was replacing somebody at the Asia Pacific level.
Yeah.
The kind of salaries that were going was 1.5 million US.
Oh wow! That's
right.
Impressive.
Yeah. So that's the kind of money that is available, right? So I would say I crossed the crore barrier in 2006-07. So that's 1 crore. So I crossed that at that level. So at that time. So beyond which there is lots more money to be made.
Sure.
So if you're really good at it, you can continue to earn. So that is the advertising line. But then there are other fields which are related to advertising. Let's say filmmakers, a good cinematographer, right? A guy who's behind the movie camera. That fellow earns about 2 to 3 lakhs a day. Okay, a good photographer earns the same thing. Then, of course, the directors, the best directors in the country, the best advertising directors in the country, earn 25 to 40 lakhs a day, a single day. Right now, imagine that guy is busy for 10 days, 10 days a month, and you know how much money he takes home, right? And none of these guys are products of any reputed school, right? They just, they've just come into this field, they've earned it, learned it the hard way, but they figure out, they know the knack of directing, and they pick up on acting, they know what moments count. It's about understanding a profession. So that way advertising does not have any barriers, in the sense that it lets everybody in, as long as you have the talent, as long as you have the difference, as long as you can bring in something which nobody else can bring. Nobody looks at your degree certificate, right? So don't worry about it.
Okay, so I know we are running really late, so I'm going to kind of jump a few questions and maybe focus on things which are relevant from the student standpoint of view. How big is apprenticeship or internships to get into the industry? Nabeel, you want to take a shot at that? How important is for students to get into
internships are available, but they're all unpaid. And, it's the kind of thing that it gets your foot in, you get your foot into the door, but you have to really grab the opportunity and do as much as you can. You will get very little in terms of guidance and things like that. But like I said, if I was looking at candidates, I would look at somebody who has, again, digital, social media presence and how effective they've been. An internship will not necessarily add a weight just by itself.
Fair enough. Karthik, you wanted to add?
Most PR agencies, and in fact, most companies also, in their own client-side communications, there are enough and more internship opportunities. They don't pay as much as a job level, but they do pay well in terms of a stipend. interestingly, as Pat said, it is not very specific as to what you have studied, what kind of stuff that you studied. It's just your articulation skills and your connecting the dot skills and the passion that you bring, basically. Because these days, if you want to learn about PR, you just need to go to the internet and find the right PR agencies. What have they done? What are the kind of work that they've done? If they're able to demonstrate that, it doesn't matter whether you have done physics, chemistry, or maths in your school or college. It hardly matters at all. You just need to showcase that aptitude by being interested and passionate in the subject. You can easily get into an internship in a PR agency, actually.
Yeah. Joseph, did you want to add anything from your side? Joseph?
So internships do help in the sense that it's an opportunity to observe what is going on. It's an opportunity to step up. People at work, they have no time at all to teach interns anything. So you're basically almost on your own. So it's up to you to figure things out. People are busy with deadlines. So yeah, so it's totally up to you to see the initiative there. So yeah, internships does matter, unless of course the other way out is if you are in a major liberal arts institute such as St. Stephen's or JNU in my case, then it's possible to get a foot in the door, directly.
Right.
If you're based in Delhi, especially.
Yeah. And Pat, what are your thoughts on getting in? Because a lot of the students, want the first door to open for them, and how do you open that first door?
Yeah. See, interns, essentially, the way I see it, they are painful. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because, you are basically fed the impression that advertising is glamorous and advertising models. I mean, there are models that come in, there's so much of this, so much of that. And they come in and they find that people work through the night. There's so much of sweat. There's so much of grind. There's so much of fighting that happens. Because, see, it's a people intensive thing, right? And in that, what happens is, unless you really love, any part of it, whether it is art or whether it is design or whether it is writing, I need to see a skill. I need to see something in you, right? And you need to come in for the rough ride. If you come in there just because, your institute has said, look, I need to put in a certificate after, I have completed 3 months of internship with an agency, that is useless.
Yeah.
That's a waste of my time. That is a waste of their time. Usually what happens is interns get attached to the junior most of teams, and they never learn anything. And much like Joseph said, it's carpe diem. You have to seize the day. You have to come in and it is up to you. You are given a chance, you've come in, and now you make the best of it. And a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And again, just to build on that, Pat, I mean, one of the important skills in advertising is creativity, right? How do you assess whether somebody is creative? Because, in a job interview, if you ask, are you creative? They definitely say yes. But are there some tools you use?
Yeah, I do. See, there are two kinds of things which I look at. One is, I just need to go to that person's social media page. Okay. Figure out what has that person written. Now, if somebody comes to me as a copywriter, now the first thing I want is that person's writing has to be clean and it has to be correct, grammatically correct, no spelling mistakes, no typos, etc. I just have to look at that person's social media profile, right? Whether it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. If that person is shabby, I said, look, I don't want this person.
Okay.
But if that person has written out stuff, taken time to, because see, that is where you advertise yourself. Advertising comes into play on social media, right? How do you present yourself to the public? So if I see somebody using, the right pictures, the right kind of tone, and there are a lot of people who push out a lot of, stuff on social media without thinking too much. Everybody looks at you via your social media today. Okay, so to me, writing, I look at that first, and I look at their application, I look at their CV. Is there anything different that person has done? Because if you are intrinsically different, you will not come to me with a regular beat up CV or a resume. You will do something which is different. I took one person because one person came to me with a basket of eggs.
Basket of eggs?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I have had so many people come and do all sorts of things. There people come in fancy dress. There are people who make that effort. You see, earlier we did not have social media, right? So it was all one-to-one. So people tried a lot of things. People have actually taken my own ad out, rewritten that ad and said, look, I did not like your ad. Here is what I think you should have
Better
done.
version.
Yeah, I mean, look, creative people are also very open, right? Especially at a senior level, you're open. I mean, those people, the youngsters are not a threat to us, right? But we'd like to encourage talent. We want to see new talent, right? And the one thing which I really look for is something called lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is very different. It is There are two kinds of thinkers in this world. There are lateral thinkers and there are vertical thinkers.
Non-lateral
Yeah,
thinkers.
people who think like this, people who think like this.
Vertical thinkers.
Here's an example. This is a glass.
Yeah.
Right now, the first thing that I can actually do is ask somebody, tell me 5 things that you will do with the glass, or 5 uses of a glass. And the first set of answers I'll get is, oh, I can put water in it, I can put milk in it, I can put soil in it, I can plant a flower, I can put it outside and birds will come and put their eggs in it. Yeah, I can use that and use it as a mug to take a bath, right? I can use it as an ashtray. I can put spare coins into it, right? Now in that, what happens is, it is actually one use. The use is that you're just replacing what goes into that glass, right? The use of that as a utensil or a container remains the same.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, you can miniaturize earth and put it inside, but it is still a container.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So to me, that is vertical thinking. It's like one hole you're digging in and going in deeper and deeper, vertically. Correct. Now the lateral thinker. This is the glass. I can actually use this and put it on top of this thing, flour, and make puris with it. Right. Suddenly it's a puri maker. I can actually slice this and use them as bangles. I can throw this. I can use it as a weapon. I can break this up and put it on my wall as decor. Right. So suddenly I can actually use I can break this, use it under my chair to prop it up so that my chair doesn't wobble. There are so many uses. Right. So that there you've gone away from the use of a glass as a utensil and you're doing something else different with it. That's the kind of mindset that I need. And I can interview somebody in about 5 minutes. I'll figure out, whether the person is wired this way or that way. And it doesn't matter. I mean, we are all a combination of both, right? Because you can't apply the same for mathematics. You know what I mean? 1 + 1 has to be 2. While in advertising or in creative, 1 + 1 for me is 3, because mother plus father is son. So 3 ho gaya na. Right? Or 1 + 1 is a bigger one, because one ladder on top of another ladder is a longer ladder, right? So that's lateral thinking that you can't apply in mathematics, right? In regular life. But this is the kind of mindset and quality that you would need. So any child who has that sort of a quality to think outside of the box is someone who has an affinity.
Yeah. I think, can you guys hear me or? Yeah, because I think Prathap is frozen out. Prathap, are you still there?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Well, thanks for that, Prathap. I think that's a great example or an explanation of creativity, and that was one of the questions which came from the audience as well. Define creativity. Thanks for that, guys. Now I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to jump to some more relevant questions before we close out. And Pat touched on the social media aspects, and Karthik, I want you to take a shot at this question. What's important when you look at how best to use LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn is a tool a lot of employers look at. And I think when we first connected up, and the first thing you did was to check me out on LinkedIn. And I hope you found it sufficiently good enough to call me up and have a conversation. So what should students think about when they look at LinkedIn?
Yeah. So the first thing to remember is that earlier we were told that the CV or the biodata is the most important thing in the world. Right. But back then it was just a static 2-pager or a static 3-pager. Yeah. Now a CV or a biodata is actually a live document that you update every single day as a way that it actually talks about yourself in interesting ways. Now, your presence on social media is almost like the Zoom window that I'm actually sitting on. It's not a live 24/7 video stream that you're doing to the world, because people don't know beyond what they can see behind me. That's what people can see. Now, if you are aware of the fact that people see only that, you would do the best in the background so that people will think best about you. That's literally what social media or LinkedIn or Twitter is actually. So you actually choose what you want to say based on something that can actually build a better perception about yourself as an individual, your talent, your passion. So you first define yourself as a product like you do in advertising, and then talk more about those few topics again and again. Does it mean that you're actually faking it? You're not faking it. It's almost like you're on the stage with the limelight. And when you're on the stage, you actually throw your voice, you make eye contact with the audience. That's literally what you're trying to do, because you're just aware that people are watching you. So you actually behave, and people are actually watching you while you are actively on LinkedIn, and then you behave and you make the best of that kind of attention. The more you do that, the more opportunities will open up for you, because people will be impressed saying, oh, that's a very interesting perspective. He might be able to help me, or he might be a good fit for my company. That's literally advertising yourself one day at a time, one tweet at a time, one post on LinkedIn at a time. It's just that people don't think of that as that opportunity. They just think, what do I say today on LinkedIn? Okay, let me type this. That is completely pointless. Be more purposeful. Think about how will people perceive that, and then write towards that in a way that it adds.
Great advice. I mean, obviously, target your messages to the customer. Yeah. Let's now shift to the school environment. I know a lot of us want to talk about old days in school. And this is a question to Pat and Nabeel and Joseph. I'll start with Nabeel. I mean, what kind of skills did you pick up from school which kind of helped you in your career? What kind of advice do you have to the school and students who are still studying how best to develop those skills?
I think, to be quite honest, much of the benefits of studying at Loyola only, or it emerges later on in life. I think one of the things was, we had the freedom to question, and there was no, and not to conform wasn't frowned upon. And your mind was open to a lot of the diversity of views and ideas. I remember once, I think it was during our school years, the whole uniform rules were relaxed, shoes and ties and things like that. And the reason wasn't that the school didn't care about discipline, but it cared about everyone, regardless of how well off they were, So in one of the things in journalism that becomes critical is empathy, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, especially when you're reporting a story, when you're editing a story, you have to be as authentic as you can to the source of your story. So this is one of the small things that it emerged. I think it's a whole many experiences make up what a person this. But I think the school was this was one of the things that was very formative.
Yeah. And Pat, I mean, I know we went to the same class and same years. Your thoughts on how the school has impacted you? And I know it is obviously a fascinating story, right?
No, everything that I am and whatever was inside me to reach where I am has always been what the school gave us, right? It is also, I think, part of the because of the syllabus that we followed. We followed ICSE, right? And for me, because I am a writer today, I can always go back and say, look, I was most interested in the English books that we had to study. We had Julius Caesar, right? We had Ageless Stories. We had Jungle Picture. We had Panorama, right? Poems and poetry and all that. And I think it was also how the teachers did their task, right? Very interestingly, there was this one father that we had called Father P.C. Zachariah, who was the brother of the other P.C.'s chap from Xavier's Institute. Yeah. So P.C. Zachariah was a shortish, man who walked into our class one day, and he had this. He was basically from the U.S., Malayali chap, but
he came back from
the U.S. and he had this very liberal point of view. He came to our class and he realized that the other class next to us did not have a teacher, right? So they had a free period of sorts, and these guys were like, screaming at the top of their voice. And he said, who are these spy dogs, in the class? I don't think I can teach you guys here. Why don't we just go out and, hang around near the trees? And for us, a teacher actually taking us out of that classroom outside was something new. I mean, it's very simple if you look at it, but that to me was a very, very different thing, right? And then we had CP Varti, who was the principal, and he was the one who taught us Julius Caesar. So, while the book was fat and thick and the way he did it was that he had these BBC cassette tapes, which had Richard Burton and people like that who were speaking this, and he would play that, and we could hear Richard Burton speak. So the entire thing was very dramatic, and we followed it to the T. In fact, many of us sort of remember it by rote, right? We still remember, bits and pieces of Julius Caesar, even the poetry that we, went through. So I think English to me fascinated me from that perspective. So, and it was also the school which allowed us, which made sure that our diction was right. People say that when I speak, they can't really figure out if I'm a Malayali, if I'm not a Malayali, where am I from? Thankfully, it helped because, this accent did not come from anywhere. This accent came from the school. While a lot of my friends perhaps did not like it because their passion was not English, I took it up. It came to me automatically, the way to speak, modulation. And of course, the opportunities we got at speaking in front of the assembly. Every Monday, you had to speak in front of the assembly. One of us had to do that. That was, again, public speaking at its best. Our youth festivals that we had, there's so many things here. I mean, the school was very, very, important. And I also think that the place where the school was, so many trees, so much of nature. We would actually go out into the fields, which is below the school. We would catch fish. We would see there was a piggery over there. We would go and see the pigs over there. There's so many things to do. So I think the school cultivated a lot of things in our heads.
Fantastic. Yeah, very true. I mean, I can only add, Father Zach taught us geography, and he opened our eyes to the world, and made all of us want to go and see the world. I know we're totally running out of time, so I'm going to just take one last question. Probably share with us, your biggest success or mistake or failure. I mean, I know it's going to be an anecdote from your careers. Something which you learned from, and what you like to share with the students. Let's go with Karthik. Your thoughts.
The biggest failure would be that I actually started with sales in spite of the fact that I had no clue about sales at all. But it was actually that kind of a time where I had finished college and I had to do something about my career, and I just took up something that came into my head. I didn't even have a CV at the time, and I actually went to a company for an interview without a CV, and that guy actually very politely told me that you need to have at least 1 page worth of whatever you have done. And I said, I've just done finished college. What do I write? He said, please prop it up, do something well. So, and it was actually a period of time where I had absolutely no clue what I do with my life at all. And that sales was terrible. I mean, I was horrendous at sales. It was like the guy that you actually spoke about in the beginning. I was as bad as that because I was also stammering, and I was supposed to sell Amex cards to people, and it was impossible and it was completely hopeless. But it's just that much later that I actually found out that the more I read about that career and the more I read about those kind of opportunities that exist, that it actually opens up your mind. Back then, it was very difficult to get that information because you need to find the right mentor or the right person in your family or your circle. Only then you will get to know, or you need to join a big library where there will be a lot of books. These days, everything is on a platter. You just take up the phone, the whole world opens up for you. Unfortunately, people waste their time on the internet. There is so much to learn on the internet, and every topic you can just go through the rabbit hole and know inside out and then form perspectives in your head. That's what will actually make you much better. So in terms of failure these days, it's not that big a deal actually, because the whole world is open for everybody. It's just completely democratic these days. You just need to apply your mind and get on with it, quite literally.
And probably because you failed in sales, you became good at public relations and communication, right? Otherwise, you'd be still selling Amex cards for you. Yeah. Pat, your thoughts? I mean, you must have gone through a lot of hoops to get to where you are. Any messages from your side in terms of failures which changed your life?
I think one of the biggest turning points in my life happened in school. So we had a subject called English comprehension, if I remember right. And one of the things that we had to do was to write an English story or an essay kind of a thing. You had two choices. Either you could, there was a picture and you could write a story to that picture. Or on the flip side of the cyclostyle, there were some 5 unconnected words like think, maybe, light, sky, frog, tree, unconnected. And from there, you need to write something. Essentially, for 2 hours, you have to write something. So I was always an average student in class. Out of class of 40, I was possibly 20, 21 kind of a thing. And I was never the topper in class, at least in English. So one fine day when we had this weekly test, it was a Friday, I think, we had this test. I looked at the picture and I saw this, scribble, and a story fell into my head. And, I had this beautiful story that happened, and it took me all of 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it was to finish that story. And by the time I finished that story, it was almost like, I knew in my head that it was amazing. I don't think anyone could ever beat that story, that kind of a story. I still remember the name, Operation Jalraj. That was the name of that story.
Yeah.
So so after the weekend passed, on Monday, the teacher came back and started distributing the answer sheets. So as was tradition, the guy who got the least number of marks would be called out first, and he would work the way up to the first. So everybody's paper was given, and finally he said, "Look, this time we have a surprise first place, and the first thing goes to Prathap." And he wrote this beautiful story, and he got 83 out of 100, and it blew my mind. I said, "My God!" While I knew I was good, I didn't know I was so good that I would be the first in that particular test. So a bunch of my friends celebrated together, and we had this last interval before the last period. And suddenly there was a peon from the staff room who came back and said, "Look, some of the teachers want to see your paper, so I need to take your paper back." So I gave the paper. I was very happy. I gave the paper. It went back to the staff room and it came back after about 10 minutes. And in that, I had 83. So 83 was cut and it was made into 78.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they cleaned up 5 marks, right? Now, I don't know why they did it. I have no reason why. Now, at that point, I was heartbroken. I was shattered when I got it, right? And I said there was no, and basically, it meant that the guy who was the second immediately became the first. And because I was one mark, short of him. And to me, that was an incident which which could have actually completely broken me and could have made me hate English. But somewhere inside me, I said, "Look, I don't know why they did it, and it's not my fault. I did the best I could. But from now on, even if they cut 5 marks from me again and again, I will write in such a way that I will always be the first." Right? So to me, that was an incident that could have actually broken me and completely make me despise the language. It wouldn't have taken me where I am today.
Yeah.
Because it would have taken me somewhere else. It would have destroyed me. But for me, I took that up as an opportunity. I didn't plan to. It came as a natural response to that moment. And it threw me into this, saying that now you go and write your way to the top. And from that moment onwards, I've always been the first in my English paper across my college years as well. And I continue to do that. I continue to write. So that's something which I learned from school. It was a big low for me, but it also happened to be the big high that catapulted me.
Yeah. Failure stepping stone to success, right?
Yeah.
Joseph, I know we're really running out of time. Any anecdotes from your side about school which you really cherish?
Oh, you meant school, but I want to talk about setbacks actually quickly.
Oh, go ahead, please do.
So when I got my job in Al Jazeera, I had to start off at a lower level than what I had worked in back in India. So for them, my 7 years of experience didn't count for anything. So I was essentially starting from scratch all over again, which was quite disquieting. But then I liked the work, and I mean, I felt inspired enough to work my way up ever since. So yeah, so that was initially, it took a bit of time getting used to. And the second setback I want to talk about is that in 2012, Al Jazeera decided to downsize operations in Washington. So I was told I would be losing my job. And it was a couple of months. It was quite, I mean, I don't know which way I would be going. But then this a job in Doha worked out with a promotion as well. Yeah, so but then there is a stressful period in between.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. And again, I think that's a fair point. A lot of students don't realize that when you go abroad, whatever your Indian experience is, a lot of companies don't consider it. So you'll have to start from scratch. And like you, I also had to, get started at a very low level when I moved outside to Australia. We are running out of time. So I'm going to, first of all, thank you guys for your insights. I'm going to ask a couple of poll questions of the audience before we wind up. These are questions related to how they perceived our session today. Can we have the first poll question 3, please? Yeah. So essentially, we would like to ask you, how do you rate the content of today's session? I mean, did you find it interesting? Was it good, very good, neutral, or not good? Yep, I'm going to give another 3 seconds. Folks, please click any of the answers and press submit before we close. All right, okay, that's great. Can we have, yeah. Can you see the results? We have about 50% or right, 70% saying very good and 26% saying good. So we have a 96% success rate. So well done, guys. Next poll question, please. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Can you launch? Yeah, next question. So this is the tough one, guys. We are asking the audience how they rate the panelists. So if you get anything less than 60%, we might have to, send you a report card. Okay. Another few seconds. Please press submit at the end so we can move on. Okay. Can you please share the results and we can end the poll? Outstanding. 84% of the audience thought you guys were very good. Well, a big pat on the back for all of you guys. Before I wind up, I wanted to kind of obviously do some housekeeping. We have a next session coming up in January 9th, where we will be talking about the defense sector and armed forces, DRDO, IPS, and so on. Next. And next slide. Yeah, so again, this is for the audience. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you found this session useful. Unfortunately, we did run out of time, but there were a lot more questions I wanted to ask the panelists. If you have any questions which we haven't answered, and you think it's important and it's related to career guidance and related to career of your son or daughter, please email it to us at exploreloba@gmail.com, and we will forward it to our panelists. And they will, if they can answer, they will answer it to you directly. So again, panelists, please stay online. We're going to take a break for the audience to sign off, and then we'll have a short debrief after that. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.